Okay, for this part of the course, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a little application. First, we're going to write it in an object-oriented style. So everybody should be pretty familiar with that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to refactor this into a functional style programming. And the reason for is that sometimes if you're working, especially with a team, this is where you'll see this, is that you have to inherit some legacy code. And part of inheriting the legacy code is that you might want to refactor that, okay? But first, let's see how. This is usually the way that you'll see some code written, and then you'll see how we refactor it into a functional style of programming. And I think this is a very useful exercise, especially because this is usually the situation that most people or most developers find themselves in when they're coming into some legacy code, and it'll be good just to get that practice. So, okay, let's go over the index file. So once you open up your resources under apps, under calculator. So that kind of gives you an idea what we're going to be creating. And it's going to be a calculator very similar to something you might find on a phone or, just very simple calculator. So don't think this will be like a scientific calculator or anything. And what we're going to be doing is, let me just walk you through the HTML file. And the HTML file, it's very simple. It's just a couple of divs with some classes on it. The index .css has a styling for it. So that'll be provided for you, as well as a scaffolding for the main app. And again, it's just, some a few classes that are going to be important. So we have the calculator display over here, and then I'll show you what that looks like on the browser. We have some data actions. We'll be using that for from some state, storing the state and then changing it. So that'll be. And if you don't know about the data attribute for HTML elements, check that out. There's a lot of good resources online, but pretty much it's just a handler for us to be able to get access to this element, and then we'll change it with JavaScript, their values. And then we have other classes over here, which are the digits themselves. So these are from 0 to 9. Over here, we have the operators, we'll call them, which are addition, subtraction, division, and the calculate and the clear sign. Okay, and then down here, we're just loading a JavaScript file, which I'll show you, has nothing on it for as of right now. And then if we go online, we see that we have a calculator styled, looking pretty nice, but it actually doesn't do anything. So let's get into that, okay? So the first thing that we might want to do is we have to get, okay, as you can see online here, we have the display, and then we also have the keys, okay? And also there is the document calculator. So I think those are three good places to start. So let's start storing that in some variables. Okay, so we're gonna go for the display. We're gonna go document dot get element by ID, and that's called calculator display data. Okay, then I'm gonna copy this a few times. Let's grab the keys, all the keys pretty much. So over here, we're going to get element by class name. And then this is the calculator button. Okay. Button. And then we're just going to get access to the actual wrapping div, which is the calculator. All right. So let's now let's do something. We're going to do var keys array. And then we are going to store all our keys in an array, okay? Because the reason for this is once we get the elements by class name, HTML returns a weird object that they're not actually something we can iterate over. So we're gonna put them in an array. That way we can loop over them and each of the keys, okay? So this is a new, I think on JavaScript, this is pretty new, but other libraries have had this. But essentially all we're doing is we're storing the keys in an ID. So we're gonna get them, and then we're gonna store them in an array. So we can, again, the main thing is so we can iterate over them, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Keys array dot add, let's just go for each first. Okay, so for each of the keys, then we're gonna get a key out, okay? So now we have access to a key. So then we're gonna do key dot add event listener. And then what we're going to do is we're gonna listen for the click events, and then it's gonna give us the event. And then let's just console out let's see, e.target.text content. Okay, let's see if I got that correct. And let's see if we're getting some, let's open up the console on the browser. And keys array is not defined. Keys array, okay. Let's see here. So now we have, so we're getting, there you go. So on the console over here, we can see that we have the keys actually being, okay. So there you go. All right, so our application is coming along. So let's keep moving and let's think about how we might want to break this this application up into logical sections, okay? And remember, this won't be the functional style. So I'm gonna try as much as possible to emulate some of the code that you will see most likely out in the wild, okay? So we're going to be storing state, we're going to be accessing state. So this is going to go against everything that we have just learned, okay, about function purity and all that. And you will see why after this, how when we go and rewrite this application in a functional style, it's so much easier to reason about. And but again, you will see over here, this is similar to how we start coding when we're learning. This is exactly what probably every single one of us has done in the past. I'm certainly not, I'm certainly guilty of it myself. So there's no, yeah. So, okay, let's think about over here. So let's store a few things that we're going to be accessing throughout the tour. So let's store the key, the actual key. So that's the e.target, okay, from the event. Then let's store the action. And then key.dataset.action. And if you guys remember over here, in the data action, okay, that's where we're getting that from. So that's the data set. That's what I'm saying. If you haven't looked into data attributes for HTML elements, look into it, but that's pretty much a way to access an element. Okay, so then we're gonna go into key content, and that's exactly what we just consoled out. So you pretty much have an idea what that is, key.text content. Okay, then we're gonna have a const display num. So this is gonna be what we're going to display on the displayed num. Okay, and then we're going to just say make it the display value. No, display that value. So that's an input. Oh God, okay. And then we're gonna go const previous key type. Okay, and then we're gonna go calculator dot data set dot previous key type. Okay, and again, that's what we wanted to get access to over here. Let me change this to calculator. That's what we want to save this over here. Okay, the reason being is so we can add some global variables to it. And again, this is I agree, this is completely horrible. But again, that's what we're going to be doing for this. So let's just try to get through it. So let's first start with the actions. Okay, let's see. So if action, okay, so now that we have the actions, okay, if the actions equal add, let's say add, or okay, so let's say what are the actions that we want to either add, what do we have, subtract, then we have multiply, and then we have divide. Let's see if I saw this right. Okay, divide. So if we have this, let's console log and MSD or operator. So what we're going to be checking over here is we want to see if what the user clicked was one of the operators, okay, one of the action operators. And then let's just console log that they did, operator key. Okay. Okay, there we go. I think I just added one too many or statements. I don't think we should need the else branch. Okay, so that's fine. So if we click on a 1 or any of the digits, we shouldn't see anything in the console, right? But if we click on one of the operators, there we go, okay? So now we're actually getting, we're gonna start, again, if you think about this application, it can go either ways, right? So the user, the first thing that we want to make sure that they type in is one of the numbers, right? So if you want to add or multiply or do anything, the first thing you have to do is a number, then an operator, then another number, right? So that's kind of, and again, we want to keep this application fairly simple, but that's, for any simple kind of expression, that's kind of the pattern that we want to make sure that we're tracking, right? So first it must be a set of digits, then an operator, then another set of digits, and only then can we actually calculate something, okay? So that's what we're starting with the operators. So then we're gonna go ahead and say const first value equals calculator dot data set, okay, dot first value. Okay, then we're gonna have the operator itself, and you'll see we are creating these variables so that we can then keep track, okay, exactly of what the user, it's operator, of what it is that the user has typed so far. So then that way we can second value. That way we can display number. Okay. That way we know if we're ready to calculate and if, when the user clicks the equal sign. Okay. So okay. Now within here, now that we have this variable stored, we're going to write another if statement, and we're going to say if first value, okay, and operator and previous key type does not equal operator. Okay. Then what we want to do is we want to say const calc value equals calculate. And we'll create this calculate function in a little bit first. And we're going to pass it the first value, the operator, and then the second value. Right, so the first thing we want to guard against, and then let's just finish this display dot value equals calc value. Okay, so we won't get to this right now, but the first thing we want to guard is when a user clicks one of the operators. Okay, we want to first make sure that the first value, the operator itself, and then the previous key typed is not an operator. Okay, because if they do that, then that means that they're actually clicking on one of the equal signs. Okay, so that's what we want to guard against. We want to guard against that pattern, that we want to make sure that it's a digit, okay, an operator, and then another operator. Otherwise, if they, for example, let's say they do 1 plus plus 1, right? That's not something that we should, although they clicked an operator, that's not how we want to store that value, right? So we want to make sure that they store a digit, one operator, and then another digit. And the digit could be as long as they need to, but we need to guard against that case of a user might click, 1 plus 1 or plus plus 5, right? So that plus plus, or a user might click 1 plus and then click minus 1, right? So they click plus and minus 1. So which one do we store, right? So we want to store just the last one, okay? But besides storing just the last one, we also want to make sure that we don't store both, right? So we want to forget the previous one and then store just the most recent one. That's the idea, okay? All right, so let's continue over here. Else, we're gonna say calculator dot data set dot first value equals display now. All right, so we're saying, hey, if they haven't clicked anything, then this must be the first value, and let's store that in a first nums array. All right. So then we're gonna go over here. I'm gonna say key dot class dot add is depressed. Okay, this is when a key is pressed. Okay, so then we're gonna go. Let me just write some comments here. Add custom attributes at this point, and then we're gonna say calculator dot data set dot previous key type equals operator. Then we're gonna go ahead and add a few more. Then we're gonna say first value equals display num, and then we're going to say operator equals then whichever operator they actually clicked on at this point. All right, so the next thing we want to write is if they haven't clicked an operator, so they must have typed in a digit. Okay, so now we have the operators logic. So now that we have the operator logic written, the next thing we want to write is the digit logic. Okay, so let's say they clicked any other number that's not an operator. So if it's not an action, okay, then what we're gonna say is, let's write an if statement. So displayed num, if it equals 0, and because this is gonna be a string, or if the previous key type equals operator, or the previous key type equals calculate. Okay, then what we want to do is we're going to say display dot value equals key content. Okay, else, go back over here. Okay, else display dot value is going to be displayed num plus key content. And what we're saying here, so imagine they typed in the number 1, and then after number 1 they type in the number 5, but then they haven't pressed any other operator. So what we're going to say is, hey, then all that means is they're still, pressing a digit and they haven't pressed an operator. So let's just add whatever the previous digit was to the current digit. So if they press 1 and then 5, then what we should display is the number 15, not a 1 and a 5. Okay. Okay. So then we're going to say calculator dot data set dot previous key type equals a number, right? So we're going to store the fact that the last thing we pressed was a number. And then over here, if you notice, we're also doing the same thing, right? We're saying, hey, the previous key type was an operator, if it is an operator. Okay, so let's see what we have. Okay, great. So now we get the numbers. Okay, then we have the operator keys, and then we have so we're getting some feedback on the display. Okay, so now our calculator is, so we have the operators, we have the actions, and then let's see what else we're missing over here. All right, so next let's write the calculate function. Let's write the calculate logic, and then we'll write the function out. Okay, so if they click, okay, if the action equals calculate, okay, then let's console log that they've hit the equal key. Okay, then the next thing is very similar to what we did over here, the operator, the second value, all that. Let's just copy that so we can store the state. So data, the first value, the data set, the operator, and display num. Okay, so it's pretty much the same thing at this point. Okay, and this is part of doing object-oriented programming. Everything is tied to an object, right? So we can see that our variables, our state, everything, we're storing in an object. So the operator that data set that first value, that's where we're storing everything. And then you see that with our logic over here, it has to be if else statements, and and again, this is going to be a pretty simple application, but this is usually how most applications are written. And you can see how very quickly it can kind of get out of hand. Okay, and it could become very, very difficult to debug these types of applications if someone doesn't know the code base to begin with. So first value. Okay, so we're going to say if the first value, and then once we're in here, we're going to go if the previous key type equals calculate, then what we want to do is we want to say first value equals display num. Okay, so, and then we're going to say second value equals calculator, okay, dot data set dot mod value, okay, and then the next thing we want to write is display dot value equals calculate, and we're going to pass it the first value, the operator, and then the second value. Perfect. Okay, and then over here we're going to go ahead and so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go set the mod value attribute, and that's going to be calculator dot data set dot mod value equals second value. Okay, and if you're not lost by this point, believe me, this is as I was writing this code, this was, I was losing myself, just making sure that I was keeping track of the correct state at any point in time in the application. So now we have the calculate function. Okay, so again, we have our numbers, then we have our operator keys, and then we have the equal sign. Okay, so now that we're pressing the equal sign, we're getting some feedback, and it says the calculate function has not been written yet. So how about we go ahead and do that now? Okay, so let's go ahead and step out of the for each call, and let's write it up here because that doesn't need to be in there necessarily. So const calculate, and then we're going to say it's going to get a n1, an operator, and an n2. Okay, so the first number, the second number, and then the operator as well. And then the first thing we want to do is we're going to set the result to an empty string, and then we're going to if operator equals add, and then we're going to run to write something else. Else if operator equals subtract, then we're going to want to write the logic there. Okay, else if operator equals multiply, then we're going to want to write something there, and then else if the operator equals divide, then we're going to want to write something there. Okay, and then at the end, what we want to do is we're going to return the result of whatever that operation gave us. Okay, so we're just going to return the result. Okay, and then as you can imagine, what we're going to be doing in here is we're actually going to be changing that result within each of these if statements. Okay, so if it's add, then what we're going to do is we're going to be result equals, and we have to pass it, remember, as a string. So we're going to pass in, we're going to make it into a float. That way we get an actual number plus parse float, and that's going to be n2. Okay, great. So let's write the next one. The result is going to be, again, parse float. Very simple. Let's see if you can follow along. And then all we're doing is the opposite of subtract. So we're going to, the opposite of addition. So we're just going to subtract this, parse float, and then we're going to pass the n2. Perfect. And pretty much it's the same thing through and through. So let's just copy this code. And then over here, we're going to multiply it. Let me make sure I make a mistake there. And then over here, we're going to divide it. Okay. So let's see here. I'm getting some pretty weird syntax highlighting. Let's make sure that, let's see if I'm getting any errors. It looks like I am. Let's see where that is. So the operator, if, yep, that's fine. Oh, I see what I did. I forgot the arrow sign. So we're using the arrow syntax over here. This could have easily been just function and then I can just remove this, and then that would have been fine as well. But let's stick with the arrow function for now. So there you go. That's our that's our calculate function. Okay, and we're going to put it right here. So right before calculate, we're going to write if action equals clear, console.log clear key. Okay, if key.text content, if it's AC, then the calculator. So what we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to reset all our values. Okay, so once someone's done with their calculation, then in the display, what we should show, it's back to the initial state, right? So the initial state was just pretty much everything was empty empty strings. Okay, so let's make sure that we clear all our values. Okay, and then the previous key, yeah, previous key type as well. Else key.text content equals AC. And then actually we're not going to write another A. We're going to say display.value. We're going to set it to 0. And then the calculator dot data set the previous key type, and then we want to make sure that we're storing that as well, so that we know that we're in the clear state. Okay. Next, let's see when it's not. So if the action does not equal clear, then const clear button equals calculator dot query selector, and then we're going to get a holder so that we can use it later. So at this point, it just means that then they haven't pressed clear before. So this is the initial case. Okay, and then we go clear button, the text content, and we're gonna set it to CE. Okay, so let's see what we have now. Let's see, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Okay, so that's fine. Let's see if we can clear that. Cleared. Then let's go 10 times 2 equals 20. Let's see, plus 1, okay, equals 21. But we saw that in our displayed, it actually, so let's see here, plus 41. So there's some little bugs in this calculator. But again, I think this is as far as we want to take it. The main thing I wanted to show you is, look how we're using this logic. First and foremost, we're binding, right? All of our functions are now bound to the DOM. And again, it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a bad thing when it's bounded on our whole application. So our application, it's at this point completely coupled to the DOM. We couldn't port these functions or any of this logic over to a server or to any other clients, right? This has to only work in the browser now, right? Because it's tied to the browser, and everything with the key.dataset action. That's the way we're storing our state. And again, you can be you could be using something like React maybe or something like that, which makes it easier and it's much better actually, because it's in a way using some of the functional programming concepts. But again, even if you're not using React or you're using React, the fact of the matter is that whenever you see code like this, okay, this should be, let me just, let me just close this and then show you that we have one function here, right? The keys array, the for each function is actually 100 lines of code, 100 lines of code, okay? What do we learn in our previous sessions? What we learned in our previous sessions that we want to keep our functions to, again, remember, function purity, input in should equal the same input out, right? So over here in our function, look at all this logic that's happening, right? Whenever we call this for each function, okay, we have no clue if it's in what state, you know, and we have all this branch logic over here. So if, else, you know, going throughout this whole function, we have the clear state, and then within that function, we have other if else's. So I mean, again, if unless you're reading this code, right, and then you're just going step by step and saying, okay, what is this state? What's the application in what state now, and what state is it in now? So again, you can come up against bugs like this. So let's say 10 plus 1. Let's say it equals 11, and then you go plus 1 equals 12. Okay, plus 5 equals 17. But just a little bit ago, we saw that that wasn't the behavior, right? So we saw that in the display, it actually concatenated it, right? It appended the digit to the, so let's do times 1 plus, see, there you go, right? So now our display is, you know, plus 18 plus 35, and then previously we had 289. And again, yes, we could spend a little bit more time and write the, you know, this is a very simple and crude example of the calculator. But now let's go over and write it in functional programming styles, and let's see if it's easier for us to make sense of this, and if it'll help you out with, you know, as you program in your other applications, and then you'll also learn how to refactor a code base like this into something that is functional programming style. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave this code here for you, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch over to a new document, and we're going to write the functional style of the calculator.